everyone. Welcome to the SWAN Administrators and Directors Quarterly Meeting per Illinois Public Act 101-0640. This meeting is being held by remote attendance. It is 10:02 a.m. and I will call the meeting to order. My name is Ted Davis. I'm the SWAN Board President. Again, welcome everyone. Do we have any public comment at this time? There being none, we'll move on. Do we have anybody new to the call? Any new directors or anybody representing their library for the first time on Quarterly? Just unmute yourself and say hello.
Hello. Hi, Ted.
Hello.
This is Lisa Kanashak. I am at Chicago Heights. I have been director here since January, but this is the first meeting I've been able to attend. So hello, everybody.
Welcome, Lisa. Lisa has been at SWAN for a very long time in a lot of different roles. So welcome to your newest one.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Nikita, and I am representing the Matson Public Library. I'm one of the managers here. Our director recently retired. So this is my first
Nikita.
one.
Well, welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Sarah Schroeder over at Tinley Park Public Library. I am the Marketing and Public Relations Manager. I'm standing in for our new director, Zach Musil.
That's awesome. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's Jen Rieski from Downers Grove, and I am standing in for Julie today.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Good morning. This is Amanda. I am the new director for the Frankfort Park Public Library. So it's great to join you all.
Welcome to SWAN, Amanda. Anybody else?
This is Lake Michelle from Sticking Forest Public Library. Hello, everybody.
Hi there. Boy, lots of people today. Anybody else?
Frank Murray from Evergreen Park, formerly from Itasca, and now here as the new director over at Evergreen Park.
Hi, Frank. Welcome. Is that it? All right. Well, welcome to everybody. Welcome to all of our new people. We're glad to have you here. Hopefully your first meeting will be an exciting and rewarding one. Let's go ahead and move on to, we have a new thing that Aaron and Dawn are going to introduce to you. Aaron, I'm going to black out and let you guys take over for this part.
Thanks, Ted. Hi, everybody. My name's Aaron Skog. I'm the SWAN Executive Director, and there's a number of SWAN staff with me today that will be presenting, and their names will be introduced with each section that they're presenting at. And Dawn and I just wanted to kind of go over what this voting system is going to look like. So what my intentions are here with live voting was to really take into account the fact that we are looking at probably some prolonged virtual kind of attendance for SWAN membership meetings, and it seemed appropriate to maybe move to a system where we can conduct live votes that are secure. And what it does mean is that I had to introduce this in an email that I sent out via SwanCom, and then I sent out on Monday special meeting codes to the directors that I knew would be at this meeting, or I assume would come to this meeting. And then folks that reached out to me said that he could not come to the meeting. They approached me about a designee. So it's a little late in the game right now to add anyone as a voter, but it is possible for me when we demo this, that if we need to change any resolutions, any wording to a resolution during discussion, we can do that. So Dawn, you have the email up. I think we'll just show, for those of you that have the email, what it looks like when you click on it.
Yeah, let me head over. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And as soon as Aaron opens for voting, we will see that in this particular frame. Right now, we can look at what's upcoming, and we see the motions that are ready to vote on. And when voting is completed, you'll be able to see any that are closed and have the full information of what that vote was. So I think we're ready to start a practice vote, Aaron.
Sure. All right. So what I'll do right now is I'll open the "Are we ready to vote" virtually as a test vote.
And all of you that got those emails, open them up. Hopefully you're seeing a screen similar to mine that's on display right now.
I'm going to take a quick look in the chat. All right. I'm going to open up the "Are we ready to vote" virtually, and that is open. So now you see that displayed in the new category.
All right, so I'm ready to vote. I'm going to vote. And yes, I am ready to vote virtually, and I'm going to submit that vote.
It looks like you can see the votes too, Dawn.
Let's see them.
There you go.
So we see the votes coming in. And we've even got, I think, up to 2 pages of votes coming in.
I love that Jacob abstained. He's feeling ambivalent about voting.
At least practicing. He's ready for the real thing. All right, so I'm going to return to the menu here, and then as soon as Aaron closes that vote, we'll be able to see some statistics on it.
All right. Ted, do you let me know if you think I should close the vote now? I'm going to say, yeah, I'll close it.
I mean, that's a lot of people. It looks like if anybody didn't get through that, let us know now.
Because then we're gonna do approval of the quarterly meeting minutes from last quarter's meeting. All right, I'm gonna close.
Yeah, I think we're good, Aaron.
All right, so that's moved now to the closed section. So,
and we can see the results as well.
Very good. All right, so I hope that was painless. The only thing that we'll need to make sure of in advance is that what I did is I'm going to the new L2 system and making sure that if there I can do an export of all the directors or interim directors that are noted there, and I do cross-check it with anything else that I'm aware of if there's someone that I do know has stepped into the role as library director. And as I said, if there has to be a designee, I can add those persons to vote, just as I got like a request from Zach at Tinley Park for Sarah to vote. So I added Sarah in the other day. So I think we can end the live demo, Dawn, if you want, and we can go back to
I was just thinking, we did have a few people I noticed come in. So again, just as a recap, we did a sample vote, but all of you should have received this email. And if you open that email and click to log in, you will then be on the live voting system. And let me pull that up again. All right, where did that go? There it is. So that's what you should be seeing for the voting system. All right, I'm going to head back to the slides now.
Great. Thanks, Don. And thank you, Aaron, for explaining all of that. Thanks for everyone for participating. We're going to put it to the test for real. The next item on our agenda is an action item. It is the approval of the June 3rd, 2021 quarterly meeting minutes. First, can I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Okay, that was Jesse Blazek.
Jesse Blazek, yep.
And then a second?
Second, Benjamin Westlow.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, and now the vote, right, Aaron?
I will open the vote. And Jenny, just for your notes, Ben is with West Chicago. I will now open the voting for the quarterly meeting minutes. I see 28 of 44 have voted, 30 of 44 have voted, 31 of 44 have voted. I'm just going to keep refreshing. $35 of 44.
Aaron, Kevin has put something in the chat if you want to respond to that.
Kevin, those emails would have gone out on Monday, so you should look for an email that would have been sent to you maybe on Monday's date. All right, it looks like all voting has concluded. I'm going to close this, Ted.
Okay, great. All right, so
Minutes have been approved.
okay, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on then to our discussion item, Aaron. Okay. And I'll let you take that.
So I will just introduce Stephen Schluitt. He's going to walk us through a presentation, and what we're going to be, this is a primary topic for this quarterly meeting, which is an information security risk assessment. So Stephen Schluitt is the SWAN IT and Systems Support Manager. And Stephen, if you want to introduce yourself and say a few words, and then take it over from here. I'll turn off my camera.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Aaron. As Aaron said, I'm the SWAN IT and Systems Support Manager, and I want to talk about something that's really significant to me, and that's information security. And I want to start with some fun facts, try to keep it a little bit lighter. I just want to point out, last week, Dawn alerted me to the fact that it was my 8th anniversary with SWAN. And I promise you this story is going somewhere. So it was my 8th anniversary with SWAN, but I think what was even more notable is that this summer also marks my 17th year in the IT industry. And I thought back 17 years ago, what IT looked like. And I think it's interesting because at the time it seemed so much simpler. Based on the fact that our biggest threat day to day was just cleaning adware and malware from someone's laptop. And occasionally you'd have to reformat or something like that. And now system breaches and ransomware, they were out there, but it seemed like such a foreign concept. But basically what this story is getting to is when I started with SWAN 8 years ago, it was made very clear that security would have to be one of our top priorities, especially with the changing landscape. Security is and always has been inherent in SWAN services, and that's dating back even long before my time. Whether you've noticed it or not, SWAN has quietly and sometimes not so quietly ensured security as a consideration with everything that we do. Our VPN connections, TLS encrypted websites, granular permissions for different logins. But really with the changing landscape of the IT industry, our efforts internally can only go so far without consulting some outside experts. So to make sure that we're getting up to speed with the latest threats and providing us with some direction, that's something that we're considering now. So Dawn brought us to a slide here. I want to break down some of the statistics, and these are coming from this year's SonicWall cybersecurity threat report, and it's accessible to anyone. It's a public report, but I want to bring up some of these numbers because I think that they're particularly alarming, specifically with something that's so much more sophisticated like ransomware. And as you can see from the graph here, it's increasing exponentially, not just year over year, but month over month. These threats are constantly becoming far more sophisticated, and they're looking for exploitable vulnerabilities, and that could be an unpatched system, a weak password, or even just an over-trusting employee. And so you can see here that just in June alone, there were 80 million documented ransomware attempts, and that's an incredible number. And what's also notable is the fact that several SWAN libraries have even reported ransomware attacks. So I think that ties into the fact that it's not just big business anymore that's having these attacks. It's also, as you can see here from the next slide, that it's government and it's education that are also really being impacted. And government is actually one of the highest targets for ransomware attacks. Well, basically, hackers are looking for valuable data, personally identifiable information, and that doesn't necessarily just come from big business. That comes from government as well. And SWAN is also kind of in this sector, and we contain a lot of personally identifiable information. And libraries in general are kind of along the same lines. And in fact, I want to point out that the Boston Public Library actually experienced a massive ransomware attack just last week on Wednesday, and as far as I know, they weren't back online until just yesterday. So that was a week that the ransomware had taken them down. Now, another thing that I want to point out is something that I think comes hand in hand with cybersecurity, and that's patron privacy. And it ties in based on the fact that, as I said, personally identifiable information, it lives on our database. It's something that is desirable. And I want to point out some of the ways that patron privacy is kind of always at risk. And so these bubbles kind of represent the things that we contend with on a regular basis. And probably the biggest one that you see here is third-party authentication, third-party services, marketing tools. But it's not just that. That's our sharing of information with vendors, with partners. But also there's the collection of data, collection of student data, or of minors, patrons under 13, or trying to find a way to make online registration accessible but also secure, and then even globally accessible ILS tools. So we even have tools that could be accessible outside of the VPN at this point. So patron privacy is really an important part of this, and as we ramp up collecting additional information or sharing additional information, we need to make sure that all these functions are secure. And so this influences all the ways that we work with our systems. And so this is when SICKICH comes in. And so Don, we can go to so SICKICH is a third-party contracted service, and they actually handle a lot of contracted business services. They've been around since 1982, but specifically for us, SICKICH serves to supplement our in-house expertise with industry-leading security professionals. So they have a bunch of certified professionals that specialize in this every single day. And a lot of outside organizations are now seeking consultation from businesses like SICKICH. And it's mostly to perform risk assessments. They perform system penetration testing, and even to establish standards, which are some of the things that we're looking for. So SICKICH is a well-established organization, and they've been providing these services worldwide, but also they've been providing these services, to a more of just an IT consultation to some of our libraries. So they're also familiar with SWAN in some respects. So I tried to boil this down to 4 of our main goals for a security assessment. And so this really simplifies it. It's basically, we want to weigh the risks that are inherent with SWAN, and create a plan to mitigate those risks, and also determine their potential impact. We want to translate the risk analysis into a plan for disaster recovery, and also determine gaps in SWAN's system configuration and correct all these things. So that's kind of the first one. The second one is to adopt industry recognized framework for approaching security configuration policy. So what that means is, let's follow a track that everyone recognizes. So when we go to a third-party vendor and we say, we follow this framework, they can look it up on Google, or maybe they're already familiar with it, and they say, okay, that makes sense to me. That means I have to do A, B, and C to ensure that our connection and our relationship is compliant. So one specifically suggested to us was NIST 800-171, and that's a little new to me as well. But that is a globally accepted standard. It's recognizable, and that would drive kind of some of the concepts of how we handle security moving forward. The next one is pretty straightforward. It's just ensuring that we're compliant with applicable laws relating to data security and collection. So some of these that have come up over the recent years are COPPA and SOPA. You know, we've tied those into how we work with school libraries and also how we collect data for online patron registration. And the last part of this is being able to pass that knowledge onto our membership. So have solid facts, solid information that we can pass on to all of you and make recommendations on how you can handle your own security. I want to make it very clear that this project is exclusive to SWAN policies, systems, and networks. So library staff may be consulted. We might have to take a look at your firewall if we manage that firewall, but the assessment and the mitigation of these risks do not necessarily involve your local library network. So we're not trying to do any sort of security testing of your local network, of your local computers or anything like that. This is SWAN HQ for right now. And so SICKH has broken this project down into 4 phases. And the first, these 4 phases consist of identifying risks, analyzing and weighing those risks, planning on how to treat and mitigate the risks, and then ongoing management. So just to break it down really quickly, phase 1 I've detailed here a little bit. And this is essentially, this is a sampling of some of the risks that are, for one thing, to the right side, you can see some of the global threats that SWAN has to be concerned with. And then on the left side, I have SWAN, and I've broken down some of the internal risks that we have to consider. So, you know, globally, I've broken down some of the numbers, and these are actually from a combination of the SonicWall Cyber Threat Report, and also IBM has a report that's annual. That's the IBM Cost of Data Breach Report. And we have links for all these sources in the PowerPoint slides. So, you know, if you want to get more information on that, you're certainly welcome to check out those links and grab those reports. But some of the statistics here are alarming. So things like the average cost of a ransom paid in 2020 is 1.1 million. And so that's the average cost of a company having to pay for a ransomware attack. And that includes things like having to seek consultation, having to pay out insurance claims, you know, having to pay for any sort of identity protection services or anything like that that could come with that. So that's kind of where all these are coming from. You can even see 2.5 trillion intrusion attempts that were notable in SonicWall's report. So these are ones that are documented that were attempted just over various documentation from SonicWall. So it's really substantial. And then you look at the risks that we have, and we have, you know, our libraries are acknowledging ransomware attacks. We have a ton of personally identifiable information in our database, including up to 1 million patron email addresses. We integrate with 30 or 80 third-party vendors, which is quite a bit. And we also harvest to external analytics systems so that we can reference all that. And we're subject to different laws. So these are risks that we need to consider going into this. And it's a lot for us to kind of handle and process on our own. So moving to the next phase, this will be analyzing and weighing the risks. So, you know, all the things that I had identified just a moment ago, obviously that's just a lot of things, and it's kind of a thought bubble, and that's why I kind of illustrate it in that way. So what we need to do is we'll work with SICKH, and we'll actually analyze and weigh the risk of those. And this is based on that the NIST SP 800-171, as I mentioned earlier. So we will have kind of a baseline to say how we should be doing these different things, and we'll weigh the risk against that, and we'll find some things will be, you know, this is an imminent risk, we have to fix this right now, this, you know, it's a high likelihood, and so those are the things that we're going to prioritize. Other things, not so much, and so those will be kind of pushed to the back burner until we can prioritize the time for that. And that takes us into phase 3. Which is the treatment and plan of action. So after we've identified the risks and analyzed the severity of the risks, Then we determine, what do we need to do next? Okay, so, SICH can make the recommendations of, and these are just examples, enable multi-factor authentication. And we suggest that you do that immediately for A and B applications. And then we set a target start date and a target completion date. And then SICH works alongside us to ensure that we're able to actually implement that. Things like secured vendor authentication will probably come up, and we'll be able to identify the risk associated with that and the severity, and then determine how we can roll that into a schedule. So this is really creating the roadmap for how we're going to be processing these over the next year, or next several years, in fact. And we can move on to the next slide, Don. And then the phase 4 is really the ongoing risk management. So this is evaluating that plan of action and checking in on the milestones, making sure that we're completing things on time, finding out what else we've identified and adding those to the risk register. Obviously, all this with continued consultation with SICH. And then finally, the last part is sharing our recommendations and training to the libraries so that you can all kind of get some of that knowledge that we're going to be extracting from this. And so I broke down some of the timeline targets. These are just rough estimates for right now. The first part is just getting the SICH proposal, having the quarterly membership presentation so that we can review this, and getting a budget approval. And SICH is prepared to start scheduling on this right away. So we're estimating October, which would be when we'd start phase 1. We'd be looking at somewhere between November and December for phase 2 to actually analyze the risks. Phase 3 would start early next year. And then phase 4 risk management would be sometime maybe quarter 1, quarter 2 of next year, but that'll be ongoing. So that's not to say that we're going to resolve every security issue that we identify immediately. It'll be basically creating these targets for resolving these issues and moving forward and doing some regular check-ins in that phase. Now, we also have some standards development. So that includes things like ensuring that we have clear privacy policies, ensuring that we're following and compliant with COPPA and SOPA, as I mentioned before. And so that'll be a part of the standards development that we'll be working out with SICH as well. So that's kind of a side project of this, but it'll be happening at the same time. And so really that sums it up. I think at that point, if we have any questions, I'm happy to address those now. Otherwise, I can hand it back to Aaron, and he's going to talk us through some cost considerations.
Any questions on Stephen's overview? The cost of this work would be a one-time cost from to have SICH work with SWAN, and it's a $37,000 proposal, which may sound high, but we are talking that this is, a fairly extensive assessment, and it would be, basically to help 100 libraries in a shared platform. And as Stephen noted, we're all going to benefit from this as SWAN goes through this sort of journey of doing this risk assessment, and you all will be able to learn and benefit from this, and you may be inclined to also approach SICH or another vendor as well. So we brought this forward to the SWAN board. They did review the proposal. They asked us to do a presentation and seek approval for this. We would be using $37,000 of reserves for this. Presently, SWAN has a healthy reserve fund. Our policy for reserves maintains that we have 4 months operating reserve. Even after this expense, we would still have a roughly around 6 months, so 50%, 6 months operating. So the board wanted to recommend this for a approval vote, and I can answer any questions. Yeah, other vendors were approached, but they did not respond. Yes, so Tim is asking, does SWAN have a cyber security insurance policy? We do, and I would say that I am in the process of renewing that policy right now. So the issue of cybersecurity right now in terms of the rates, I'm a little concerned about rates going up, but I'm hoping that with becoming NIST compliant, that would help address any issues that may come up in the future. The other vendor was CDWG. We approached vendors, these vendors privately. Colleen's asking Stephen in this. Stephen mentioned numerous third-party interactions. Will SICKET analysis also address issues related to those third parties?
Yes. So the SICKET would address any of the risks that come from our integrations with those third parties. The good thing is the integrations that we use are SIP2 web services, Z3950. So we're only looking at potentially several different connections. So really what SICKET would be looking at is the inherent vulnerabilities with those connections. So not necessarily going out to, like Communico and evaluating Communico, but they'd be looking at our interactions with Communico and weigh that risk. And that's kind of the same way with how the libraries would be assessed. So it would be about our connections with the libraries and not necessarily what's happening internal with the library, if that makes sense.
Dawn, can you move to the next slide? I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So Ted, we would take this forward if there's additional questions, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask. We'd be looking at this resolution, and I will open the voting. If there's any changes to the resolution, we can make those changes.
Thanks, Aaron. Before I read the resolution, are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to think that's no. The resolution is that the SWAN fiscal year 2022 budget line 5830 consulting will be increased from $1,000 to $38,000 for information security risk assessment to be completed by June 30th, 2022. I would like a motion for that, please.
So moved, Jesse Blazek.
Okay, I think that was Jesse. And a second?
Second, Tiffany. Whoop, somebody got it.
Tiffany Verzani from Elmwood Park. Great. Aaron, would you please proceed with the vote?
Vote is open. Let's see, we have 33 of 50. We got up to 44 for the minutes. Let's see where we get for this. We just reached 44. I'll keep refreshing. $45, $46. Good job, everyone. I think that may be it, Ted. I will If you're all right, I can close the vote. I will close the vote. And the results are posted. Yes, had 45, no, had 1 vote, and there were 0 abstains. So the motion is passed. Thank you everyone for participating, and we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda, which is going to be presented by Tara Wood, our SWAN User Experience Manager, and this is an update on our Aspen Discovery, which is a platform that's going to run in parallel with Enterprise. And we just held our kickoff meeting, so Tara, take it away.
Hi, everyone. As Aaron said, we did just have our kickoff meeting for the first cohort of trainings. We've organized the Aspen rollout into 2 training cohorts. So the first cohort is about 35 libraries. And at the kickoff meeting, we discussed all of the considerations for the libraries kind of going forward to prepare for the rollout, as well as kind of a better understanding of the permissions and trainings that are coming up. We are holding Aspen office hours every other Monday throughout both cohorts to allow staff to pop in and ask questions. We have several scheduled administrator trainings. Libraries will be able to do quite a bit to customize their catalogs, which is very different from what you may be used to with Enterprise. SWAN staff will, of course, be continuing to help if you have questions, if there's an emergency closing to place a system banner and that kind of thing. But there are quite a few things that your library will be able to do, including customizing the look and feel, adding links, and adding as well as those system alerts if you have an emergency closing or anything of that nature. We are planning a tentative go live for now for October 18th through 29th. We've given libraries the option to kind of pick a day, Monday through Thursday, over a 2-week span to best fit the schedules of the library and everything going on and their own staffing. If you want to go to the next slide, we are shortly going to post this schedule to the SWAN support site and post the L2 events. We just recently finalized the schedule, so I thought I would share it here first. We will have our cohort 2 kickoff on January 10th. Following that, we'll have, again, Aspen office hours every other Monday starting January 24th. The Aspen administrator trainings will be held from January 18th through March 1st. And then March 7th through 18th will be the go live options. And I think around then will be when we're sort of deciding on the future of Enterprise. So it'll be a good chance. All of the libraries will have had a chance to be on Aspen and see what it can do. Also thought I'd highlight some of the development progress that's happened over the past couple of months. There are many issues and enhancements that have been resolved and added in Aspen, but I thought I would just hit some of the big highlights. There have been some additional performance improvements. We're really feeling good about where our system is at in terms of indexing times and performance and speed. So lots of progress there that maybe isn't super visible, but as you're using the system, I think will feel a lot smoother now than it did just even a few months ago. We've also made quite a bit of progress on the ProPay integration. The development on that is actually complete. We're just pending some additional testing and configuration. We need some configuration keys from ProPay that we're waiting on to make that integration live and available for patrons, but that has progressed and we're almost there to having fines payment live. We've also, we did not think we'd be able to do this when we started this project, and we were really excited that checkout history will import over automatically from Symphony, and it also syncs with Symphony. So if, for instance, if a patron turns off their reading history in Aspen, they don't want that to be available anymore, that will also turn it off in Symphony as well. So we're really happy with the progress there. There were some recent updates for holds permissions for lockers and drive-up windows so that we could make those available if libraries chose to just have those available for their patrons only. We've also added some improved permissions for the Aspen administrators to make sure for one, that your libraries have access to everything that they may want to have access to customize in Aspen, but also to ensure that no libraries can kind of accidentally mess up each other's catalogs or customizations. And then finally, there's been quite a few record grouping enhancements that Scott and his team have really led the way on recently around uniform title, but also several others over the past few months that have improved how Aspen groups different formats of a title together. I'm going to move to the next slide. I thought I'd just briefly also talk about how the development cycle works. This is something that I think has been the most exciting thing, maybe for me personally. We're kind of used to waiting a really long time for releases with Enterprise and other services, and the Aspen releases are around every 2 weeks, which is very fast, to the point that we've even wondered, will they continue to be every 2 weeks forever, and should they? Will they slow down at some point? But because they're so frequent, we have the ability to really get a lot of requests in. So now we have a test server that allows us to test new releases before moving to production. We don't add a significant delay there. It's usually releases typically come out on a Thursday, and we're typically moving to production on a Tuesday, has been how that's worked. So, so we are still getting those releases out really quickly, but we're kind of taking some time to test each one now that we're live in production with several libraries. At the start of each release cycle, we work with Bywater staff to identify the top priorities for that release. And that's been a really positive process. We've gotten so many enhancements in and really have a voice in shaping Aspen. And we've got a long list of enhancements requests that may look like, I encourage, if you're looking at it, you might think, oh, that's a lot of problems, but they're really all just a lot of ways we're able to make Aspen better, and we're getting through them so quickly. I think if you saw the enhancement request list for Enterprise, for example, I think that's much longer, but the progress kind of to close those moves much more slowly. So really those enhancement requests are a good thing. Our pilots did a lot of great work identifying potential for improvement. And right now we're still working through some kind of current priorities that were developed with the pilot libraries, but going forward we'll be working with Dux to prioritize those enhancement requests. And you can see a little shot here of how we will do that. And with our pilots, we sort of gave them a couple buckets to sort things in. So we have our kind of could do's, things that we could do, they'd be nice. Should do's are a little more important. And then the things that are on deck would be what we're going to work on for this. Probably with Dux, we'll be setting the priorities for a couple of releases in advance, maybe 3 to 4 months worth of releases. And then we will also kind of identify the things that need some more research. That means that it's not a straight cut, straightforward, here's a development request, make this button green kind of thing, but maybe we need more research to see what is exactly the problem, make sure we're kind of solving the problem or defining the problem a little better. And so we will be doing that in our bi-monthly Dux meetings. And I'm really looking forward to our next meeting where we'll start that process with the group. I believe that is all I have for Aspen. If there's any questions.
Tara, unrelated, there was a question that came in the chat. Stephen has addressed, and I think just for everyone's benefit, I'll just note that we had been talking about for this this last budget that there would be, you know, our expectation was that there would be chip and pin readers that would come out to replace any of the magnetic swipe readers. Without getting into all the details of that, we have not had any indication from ProPay that those chip and pin readers are being made available yet. So I'm not necessarily inclined to add those to the next budget. We'll just work with that and maybe amend the budget if we need to once we get an announcement that those are available. So in the meantime, if you're a library that is using ProPay and has not gotten a magnetic swipe, we can certainly work with you directly to get those. All right, so next up, I'm going to ask Scott Brandwein, our Bibliographic Services Manager, to talk about this really interesting project that we have going on, which is the diversity, equity, inclusion within our catalog metadata.
Thanks, Aaron. Excuse me. Hi. So if you haven't heard of this project before, I always forget where I've talked about this in the past. We have a small group of mainly catalogers, but not all catalogers from the SWAN membership, convening to talk about this topic of equity, inclusion, and diversity in our metadata, which sort of has focused on two primary areas. The first charge of this group was to start taking a look at our subject headings and really analyze how we're describing groups of people to make sure that the terms are not only respectful and modern, but also terms that are being actively used by our patron community. And sort of the other half of this, the group, when we started, showed an interest in talking about diversity audits and how we can maybe supplement our data to make it easier to get a kind of a holistic view of our diverse collections and sort of evaluate how we're serving our communities in that way. The two sort of go hand in hand in some ways. In some ways, they are very separate issues. So we've kind of danced a little bit between the two. We hosted a panel discussion in July, I believe it was in July, which was very, very fruitful. We had a lot of SWAN membership, but also a lot of people from outside of the SWAN community come to just sort of talk about this topic, because it seems to be a need for spaces to have these conversations. And the last thing we're sort of doing kind of behind the scenes still at this point is collecting resources on both of these, you know, sort of this whole, on both of these topics to, you know, provide for the membership to just sort of learn a little more if they want to. But thank you, perfect timing. The thing I wanted to show you, so in July, I think it was also in July, we launched sort of our first update to our subject vocabulary. And we did, we worked with the terms illegal aliens and aliens in general, both of which many, many libraries across the country have already had conversations about. We opted to replace the term illegal aliens with undocumented immigrants, and the term aliens on its own with the term non-citizens. And so this is sort of an example of what that looks like in our catalog. So I say the terms illegal aliens and the terms aliens, those terms are present in multiple subject headings. So this is one example, children of illegal aliens, is the LCSH, excuse me, the Library of Congress established subject heading. And we opted to pull that from our catalog and replace it with what you're seeing here, children of undocumented immigrants. And the details of the numbers here are not crucial to understand, but we do have this labeled here as local DEI, which says this is one of the terms that SWAN chose to replace it with, and it doesn't exist in any other vocabulary. It only exists in our local vocabulary. And the other thing to point out is the second line here, term deprecated in SWAN catalog. We did retain the old terms. Actually, that should read term deprecated, it should read children of illegal aliens, and that's a typo on my part. And that's just to give a little bit of a snapshot of what happened to the records, so we know that it's been touched by this process. But also, currently in Enterprise, the older terms, because it's in this little field, are still searchable. They're still keyword searchable, though not necessarily. They won't show up in your search facets or in your records. So we're not losing accessibility for anybody who may be using older terms, but the catalog will sort of gently push them towards our new terms when it comes to clicking through links and using the subject search facet. So that's pretty neat. The other thing we are doing, and this hasn't happened yet, we just talked about this, and I'm still working out the details of automating it, but we're also going to be supplementing some terms. And so this is one example here. The term sexual minorities, it refers to essentially the LGBTQ population. Sexual minorities is an especially useful term. I don't think it's really in anybody's vernacular. It's certainly not being searched in our catalog based on search practices. However, the term LGBTQ people, that is being searched very often. And as of now, it's not really bringing up all the results that one would expect to see. Sexual minorities doesn't need to be replaced, though, necessarily. It's not like it's outwardly offensive. So in this case, we would do a similar process and just sort of give a second term here, LGBTQ people in media, in this particular example to supplement. And this sort of goes hand in hand with something else we're currently talking about, which is supplementing our catalog with other vocabularies that may exist in the world, sort of on a voluntary quote-unquote basis from our catalogers. So the one we're looking at right now is called homosaurus. It's a controlled vocabulary of terms, again, related to the LGBTQ people and the issues that they deal with. So that's something we're going to be talking about with cataloging advisory actually this afternoon to see how that might be useful to us as well in SWAN. So that's where we are right now. And down the line, we're going to be sort of having more in-depth discussions on particular terms, sort of so slowly, because we are wanting to make sure we do this right. So we're taking our time with it. And Tim, I see your question. Some of the terms are still used in titles. Will this impact search? Yes. I mean, there's really no way around that. What we don't want to do is sort of place blocks on terms, if that would even be possible. But we also don't want to misrepresent titles by censoring or changing them. So it is sort of one of those necessary things we are going to have to deal with. But hopefully the things that we as the SWAN community are adding to our records, and the things that we do have a say in, which is our subject headings, our some of our descriptions sometimes, and the way we choose to represent, that's what we have control over. And so that's what we're trying to take care of here. And that's just about it.
Great, thank you, Scott. I'd like to provide an update on the regional meetings that were held. So the June meeting that was held for you all included a attendance virtually by Diane Foote from ILA. She's the executive director. And we talked about the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So there were, right after that week following, there was regional meetings that we held. And there was really interesting results from that discussion in terms of identifying what we saw as a kind of a summary of need for libraries in response to the pandemic. So these were meetings that were held mostly by county, where we had Cook County, of course, broken into like such a large group for SWAN member libraries. We had sort of a group for the north and the south, but anyone could really attend any of these meetings. So it was very clear from the discussion and the synthesizing everything that we heard is that community access to broadband remains a big topic. It was something that occurred at every one of those meetings that was raised by those in attendance, and continue to address mobile technology was also important. That said, libraries were also very clear that computer access in your buildings was also very important. Some folks are just not, prepared or willing to buy technology. They'd like to come into the library and use what is being provided. Support for flexible programming and events was also, a topic that was definitely discussed, such as, outdoor story time events, projecting movies outdoors, outdoor screens. So there's definitely a lot of things that were kind of identified through that discussion. And also there were suggestions for expanded collection development. So potentially looking at maybe SWAN could, at some point look at expanding collections through a grant, maybe to get more award-winning children's titles was one suggestion. And the support for flexible and evolving space needs was definitely a common theme. So you all have, this feels like ancient history at this point. We had meetings in June and already here we are in September. It just feels, like the space needs of libraries may have even changed over the last 3 months. But it was at that time, and I think you're still dealing with the fact that, your children's areas are having to deal with the users of an age that are unvaccinated. And then the other areas of the library more for small, 1 to 2 person meetings and large group meetings still really not taking place. And then overall, just the support for, your staff that have skills that have been changing or adding skills during the pandemic to do virtual programming, hosting, and events. So we did come up with a number of ideas, such as, sharing a collection of hotspots, the idea of a mobile laptop equipment for libraries, potentially looking at maybe doing more broad access to libraries and their computers. This is what we're kind of referring to as a universal access card. Doing more centralized ordering of book collections was the idea, such as I said, award-winning children's books. And looking at human resources help for libraries, and because a lot of employee positions are sort of being retooled right now. And then libraries overall are looking at, redesigning your workforce to be more mobile. Soon after, there were grants that were announced by the state library. It was a fairly short window. I'm hoping some of you were able to apply for these grants. There were 3 that were associated with ARPA that came from the Illinois State Library. Those applications closed August 15th. If some of you applied for those grants, you feel free to share right now. You could unmute and talk about what you did, or leave a message in the chat. But I will just note, some of what I had hoped to be able to apply for, once reading the details of these grants, it would have been very difficult, almost impossible, from a requirement for SWAN to get hotspots and provide those to circulate to all the member libraries. So that idea was a good idea, but when the details were kind of reviewed as far as looking at that from a SWAN standpoint of being able to circulate those, we were just really having to face the E-rate requirement and filtering requirement, and all libraries having to then be required to be in E-rate. So that wasn't something that we could necessarily do. But we have looked at other grants that are available. I did submit a grant for a National Endowment for the Arts application. So I did share that at the fireside chat held this week. And I will be providing an update. Hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be maybe seeing some decision on that relatively soon. Let's see, I'm seeing a few people in the chat. Berwyn applied for a grant to create children's makerspace area. Leighton has said that they applied for the transforming grant, the goal to get a smart locker and an event tent. That's great. Elmwood Park, outstanding technology librarian, applied for all 3. All right. And yeah, Yeah, no word back on these grants. Okay. I'm glad you all were able to, some of you were able to really take advantage of those state library grants. Dawn, do you want to add anything on at this point? This was something you and I were taking a look at. We're a little disappointed, but we're not disheartened. I think what SWAN's going to continue to do is monitor grants and funding opportunities moving forward. It's definitely part of our strategic plan to do that.
Yep, I got nothing to add.
Okay, let's move on. Statistics. So Dawn, I think we were gonna just cover what we're looking at. So we do include statistics for the membership in our monthly board operations report. If you're really dying to look at a month by month basis of what activity is looking like across the board in SWAN, but we're gonna do a overview of what some of the stats are looking like right now within SWAN.
Yeah, so we're looking at this from a real macro level, and it's amazing the consistency of pattern. The patterns have not changed from 2019. You see the kind of that curve, those yellow curves, and you see that the circulation dips and rising and then dip again for winter and summer and spring is really consistent. We're at about 72% of our 2019 circulation. So while it's lower, it's still pretty steady and same pattern as before, which is encouraging. We've been tracking holds, placement, and pickup since February of 20, which was right before pandemic, and I'm so glad we have that month. Normally, the holds data, once a hold is filled, that would be purged from our logs. And we made a decision that that data was so critical for us to analyze that we wanted to retain it. At, kind of the flip side of having more data to maintain, but it still does give us some good tools to kind of understand the behavior of our patrons in placing holds, picking up those holds, and how many of our patrons are actually doing that. And consistency is just, again, amazing. So if you look at line number 1, that indicates the number of barcodes or patrons that place and pick up holds. And we're right at around 35,000 consistently every month. Same, number every month are people placing holds and picking them up. Point number 2, that orange line just kind of shows us that the rate of pickup is actually a little bit higher during the pandemic than it was pre-pandemic. So that means when people are placing holds, they're actually coming in and picking those up. And finally, we're getting back to our normal number of holds being placed. We saw some real peaks in the winter, and that was because that was the only way to get library material when we were shut. So we were seeing holds going up, and it was kind of concerning. Are we going to continue to basically just be filling holes and providing curbside? But we see as people are able to get back into the physical spaces, we're returning to that pre-pandemic number. This last slide is really just, this is something that Tara and I were looking at yesterday, and we're like, wow, this is kind of amazing. These are holds placed by interface. So is that hold, the green is by enterprise, the pinkish maroon is workflows, the blue is Blue Cloud Mobile, and the yellow is Aspen. So you see the Aspen effect has really picked up in July and August, and that's when our 7 pilot libraries went live. Approximately 25% of the holds, the number of holds placed in enterprise, are placed in Aspen in that time period, July and August. So that's actually at a higher rate, and we are just speculating. We're trying to get some more data on this, but those of you that have used Aspen at all, you know that there are recommendations and suggestions that when you place a hold, you will see, oh, maybe you would like this. So there's almost that encouragement of related titles. So that may be what's making the hold numbers go up a little bit in Aspen. So that's just by the numbers, kind of a macro look that shows, I think SWAN overall is in pretty healthy circulation patterns.
That concludes the SWAN staff portion. Ted, I don't know if you want to open it up to anyone to announce anything. You can do it in chat or unmute yourself.
All right, I don't have any announcements, but we'd be, if anybody else does, let us know, or if you have any questions about any of the information that was presented today. Nobody?
Yeah, Tammy's noting that foot traffic is quiet. I don't know if others are observing that.
Yeah, it looks like a few people are agreeing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, not everyone is quiet. Colleen's busy. Good for you guys.
Good.
I agree with Rebecca. All the libraries in our neighborhood were busy when Brookfield was closed. We saw a big surge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's understandable.
All right. Go ahead.
We saw something similar, Ted, with Batavia got a lot of activity as Geneva and St. Charles were contending with their building renovations, construction. Oh.
I guess I could make a quick announcement. This is Leighton at Stickney Forest View Public Library.
Go ahead, Leighton.
One of the areas in our district is unincorporated Central Stickney, which is about 4.5 miles away from our physical location. And it's always been a challenge to support them with our, we tried doing programming out there, but they can't just walk or bike to the library. But they have an old clinic building there that Stickney Township still owns, but the entire clinic side of it has been shut down, and they're starting the process of renovating that whole clinic side, and they're going to tear out all of the old doctor's offices and stuff. And they've invited us to kind of partner up with them to carve out some space in there to almost be like a pseudo branch of the library, so that we could have maybe like a children's story time room in there and maybe an adult classroom in there. And so, yeah, I got to go meet with the architects and the group there today and kind of give them a wish list of things we would like to have out that way. So it's pretty exciting. That'll give us an opportunity to do some better work for those particular patrons in our district that we don't normally get to work with. And then the one thing that I need to definitely find out is if it's possible to us to sign up for internet service for a building that we don't technically own. So that's going to be on my next agenda, because we would like to be able to have, similar to the way the state had the pandemic grant to expand libraries Wi-Fi out to the parking lot. It'd be nice if I could set up an internet access point there with Wi-Fi out to the parking lot, so that patrons in that area can also be able to, drive up and park and hop on the internet if they need to.
That's super cool, Leighton. Good for you guys.
Thank you. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe even get like a smart locker out there so that staff could go out there and bring holds, load up the smart locker, and then patrons can pick them up just when it's convenient to them. Since again, it's not going to be an actual branch of the library, but it will give us an opportunity to definitely expand our support out there.
Very cool.
Hey, Stephen, I don't know if you're there. We've had a few libraries go live with lockers since June quarterly, right?
Yeah, we had Downers Grove. Actually, I don't believe that they're live to the public, but they are using DTEC lockers. And so those are actually integrated with Symphony. So in theory, once everything's working, it'll actually be able to check out the material at the time that the patron opens up the locker and goes to pick up the item. So that's pretty exciting. But that's the one that's live. I can't recall. I think Oak Park and Villa Park were both live before the last quarterly, but just notably, they also have lockers, and those have been going pretty well from what I know.
Cool. Thanks, Stephen. Does anybody else have any other announcements or questions or anything they want to share? All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I know there was a lot of information today. The next SWAN board meeting is September 17th. The next quarterly is December 2nd. Hopefully we'll be in person, but if not, I will see you virtually there. It's 11:11 and I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.